Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best, enabling you to become the best you can be. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Peter Wood. Peter is a graduate of Stowe School and UCL. He is the founder and CEO of the Graduate Guide, which aims to solve the UK's career crisis through the power of community. I'm incredibly honored to be joined by Peter today and highly interested in our conversation. So Peter, I wanted to get started. If you could take us on the journey from what it was like growing up, going to Stowe, going to UCL, and why and how you started the Graduate Guide.
Sure. First of all, thanks so much for having me on. I'm a big fan and an avid listener of your podcast as well. And so I guess how far back do we go? I feel like it's interesting. I never saw myself as this particularly academic, high achieving guy. I always saw people that were always better than me at school and everything like that. But I really, like, one thing about me from a very young age is that I really gave a shit. Like, I was very emotionally in tune with myself. Whether I wasn't the best at sport or whatever it was, I would like get really upset, to be honest, that I wasn't that. And I think that served me pretty well in my younger years. And then there's a time at sort of 12, 13, 14 where I think guys start to become guys, and they like to sort of chip away at you for your sort of natural self. And I think I lost that side of me for a while. The person that really cared, and really what was left at that point after that was not much. Pretty unambitious, a guy who you know class clown, trying to like be someone I wasn't. And it was having that realization at the age of 14 and 15, like that real like penny drop moment that wasn't working out for me and nothing was going to come from that. I was like, okay, I don't care if it means that I don't become friends with the rugby lads or whatever it is, because I give a shit and I care and I'm in touch with my emotions, but I'm going to really lean into that. And I think that was really the beginning of my success in my career, like really like trying to be as unadulteratedly myself in every occasion I could, really giving a shit, turning up to everything, being that guy that asked too many questions, being incredibly curious. And my road to getting into UCL from getting really average / poor GCSEs was I would just like stay behind class with all my teachers, like ask all those questions that like basically try and get them to do my exams for me, and play that game right. And so it did land me, well, in between UCL and school. I'd say like this is a particularly formative period, going be a ski instructor in Canada, the youngest at the resort, 18 years old, teaching adult millionaires and businessmen who are used to telling people what to do, and learning how to tell them what to do as an 18-year-old, as a qualified ski instructor. And I think getting away from the bubble that can sometimes be created at any school, but particularly a school like Stowe, it was really amazing. I managed to keep hold of that confidence that boarding school can give you, and actually level it down with real people, from all these different cultures, who don't give a shit where you've been or what you've done. They just want to meet a nice guy who can offer them something, right? And obviously lockdown happened. Joined UCL in a very weird time to go to university. It kind of felt like there was, and this scared the shit out of me, it kind of felt like, even though it was completely out of my control, glimpses of what I was like at 14, 15, not really caring, now with uni you add in drinking and like not having anything to put your time into while it was COVID. Like, I found that quite manic depressive. You enjoy it until you don't, kind of thing. And I think a lot of people have a similar experience at university, where it's like, oh, okay, when do you actually when do you get your shit together? When do you start caring about what you want to do? And for me, like, everyone around me was going into consulting and banking and law, and I was sat there going, like UCL kind of, it churns out those kind of people in these great grad schemes at these top companies, and I was sat there going, sure, fine, like, it sounds good, but when do you actually work out what you want to do? Like, when did you actually work out if this is for me? Like, I can apply for these things, and I'd probably get rejected because I didn't know why I was doing it. And so my answer to that was like, okay, let's do something completely alternative to everyone else is doing. It's not novel to start a podcast, as I'm sure you're aware. Like, there's a lot of people have them, but for me, like, I had my why locked down to start the grad guide. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do in my history degree. I wanted to speak to those that had been there and done it in as many industries as possible, and tell enough stories so that not only I, but enough other people listening along could feel heard in a career sense. And I think that was really the mission from the get go, and it's not changed too much. What's changed is that this university passion projects of mine has just pushed me out of my comfort zone time and time again, made me really realize what I am and what I'm not in a career sense. And I think, at the age of 23, having sort of built and exited from and worked with top startups along the way post graduation, I can truthfully say, like, I know who I am, I know what I offer, I know what I'm trying to build, and I know I'm trying to build it for, and that's take aside like the money you'll be taking in or whatever, like, that is a really cool thing to say at my age, and I think it's just come through a load of self-awareness, throwing things at the wall and seeing what's stuck. So yeah, that's kind of where I've landed now.
I want to, we touched on a lot there, from you going through school and having that experience at 14, 15 to you taking that year off and going to Canada, to, going to UCL and starting the graduate guide. But before we get on to more the graduate guide stuff and going back, it sounds that age of like 14, 15 was a very pivotal moment for you. Just to describe, I also went to boarding school, and I would echo the idea of the echo chamber that you mentioned. Just to, like, for listeners to kind of understand these environments, these schools are set up in a way in which you have a couple hundred students, either all boys or boys and girls, fixed in an environment, hidden away from the outside world, little outside interaction. So the only people you interact with 168 hours, 7 days a week, literally, are those exact same people, those teachers and those students. And so even if you don't like someone, every single opinion, every person is there, you're trapped in it and you can't get away from it. It's almost like in my opinion, it's almost like the older form of social media, in which, the people you hang out with, you just hear their opinions and then blah, blah, blah. And you get this sort of like effect, this trapping effect. And so if you're in a positive group of friends, you're going to be surrounded by positivity the whole time. But these schools can be, if you're not around the right people, can be very toxic, particularly, as you said, going through the starting years. I had a similar journey, which I can talk about another time. But I'd be curious as to why it was sort of 14, 15 that this realization happened. Because I think for a lot of other people, it might have been around 17, 18, you're applying to university, you're finally seeing and realizing what you're missing out on. Whereas 14, 15, you haven't really taken any exams yet. You're not in any real position of power within the school. So why do you think it was, for you, it was so young? Was there an incident that happened, or do you think it was just a mindset shift that initiated this change?
Well, I think from the outside looking in, no one would say like, "Oh, this is a really troubled kid." Like, this guy is. I wasn't the kind of person that would do anything that would get me expelled. I wasn't doing horrifically, but I knew in myself. I knew a part of myself that just didn't exist anymore, and my parents knew that. My family around me and some people that really cared for me in this time, they were like, listen, it just isn't you. And I think like that really like broke me. And it's hard to be told that time and time again that you're behaving in a way that you're not happy with, and other people are not, happy with what the outcome is for you. And I do remember like probably the most like the moment, like if there is a moment where it all felt like it changed, is I'd gotten uh I'd gotten like a report in my year 11, so pre-GCSEs, just like the worst report, like this guy doesn't, who is this guy? He doesn't respect teachers, all this kind of stuff. And I went to Portugal, which is always somewhere I associated with holiday and fun, and, love and life and beach and all this kind of stuff. And I got there and I was just fucking like depressed, like genuinely, but whether I was 15 or not, like that feeling of just what am I doing? And also the feeling of I am young enough that this doesn't define me and I can change this. And everyone told me like, people with more wisdom, years ahead, they're like, the beauty of this is that you're having this feeling now, like, really latch onto that and it will become your superpower. And sure enough, it definitely has, because learning that being yourself, as cliche as it can sound, when you actually go through that experience, um, it's it's a force like no other. It's a force to actually just do anything but go back to that and keep moving forward and building on yourself. So I think I've had that on my side since pretty young.
Yeah. And then skipping forward a bit, going back to the idea of consultant, I think again, to the average, even to 99% of people, I think it sounds quite ludicrous. It's like, oh, I start this podcast or I try and get a job as a consultant. But I think what a lot of people don't know about this world of the top universities in the world, you've got the Ivy Leagues, Stanford, the Duke, all of those in the US, and then you've got the Oxford, the Cambridge, the UCL, the Imperial, the St. Andrews. All of these kids are which associated with academic brilliance, with creating businesses, with creating community projects, and supposed to be the leaders of tomorrow, are all, they all come in doing the most incredible things elsewhere, like, starting all these different things. And then they get funneled into these universities, taught similar subjects, which they have to do, and then get funneled again into investment banking, consulting, etc. And if you're not in that, if you're not in these high paying, incredibly overworked jobs, it's seen as like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it's seen as the next, like, you're letting go sort of moment. So I just kind of wanted to add that context for listeners. But aside from like not being interested, like I feel like there was probably an additive layer for you. Like maybe you didn't see yourself as wanting to pursue that sort of career. What do you think the underlying meaning was behind not wanting to be like everyone else? Was it you flashing back to your 14-year-old self and being like, I don't want to be like that again. I want to stick to my true core values.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty obsessed about just living life as well as possible in your own way, and I didn't see how those career paths could allow me to do that. Like I've got a skill set. I am entrepreneurially minded, but at the university, it wasn't really affording me the privilege to bring that side out of me. And it's funny, like, I did all the accelerators and sort of the things where you ideate and iterate and validate to the point that you never actually go ahead and do anything at university. Like that is a pretty common
Yeah.
entrepreneurial story at university, and it's the one thing that I started just with no experience and no design skills, never having hosted anything, like back against the wall, feeling like I think this could be what I'm good at. It's become not only my career but also my business. So I think the thing is for me is that I'm never gonna be I'm never gonna be the serial executor, the when it comes to being an investment banker or a consultant, the people that are very analytical and just very head down, like sort of maybe traditionalist workers, if you like. I think that's what those careers are made for those kind of people, and if you are that kind of person, great. Like it's important to realize that you could have an amazing career in doing. But I think a lot of people make decisions in their careers based off what other people are doing and what gets like put on this pedestal of success, when without ever really trying to find out what success could mean for them, or where their natural skill set could lie. And I when it came to doing the podcast, for example, or doing anything more entrepreneurial, I was aware that I was very much a blank canvas. I was confident enough to go speak to people at the pub, and hold my own, and I was always a very curious person, and and I think I could get people bought into what I was doing and what I was building. But that alone is not enough to build a career. And I think when it comes, sort of linking back to your question about what I was like when I was younger, I really cared, and that was my superpower. And I think at university, I didn't care about being good at history. I didn't care about doing what anyone else did. But when I found podcasts and a few other things in my life, like DJing and whatnot, I couldn't just stop there. Like I had to explore it deeper than that. I had to see if I could be good. And yeah, the graduate has been 2 years of trying to become as comfortable as I can with people, being in a room with people that I had no right to be in, and asking them the hard questions that they don't normally get asked on behalf of other students. And to me, like, you add into that just how many people are affected by this current UK career crisis. I'm sure it's the same over there in America. It feels like a very impactful thing to be doing at this age, and a great thing to grow my own personal brand through. So, if I was to just say the only reason I'm doing this is because I didn't want to be a consultant, I'd be lying. I think there is that element to me that knows that I could do more than that. Yeah, I think I'm capable of more. And I would argue a lot of the people that do go into those jobs do more as well, but they're so used to having it their way, and they can do it with such ease, a lot of them, that they never challenge it because it's easier that way. It's more fun to just do things you're good at. But I think the best things come from sort of challenging yourself to do things that you don't know if you're going to be good.
You mentioned this career crisis in the UK and in the US. And again, from the sort of type of schools and type of universities we've talked about, they're very unattainable for most people. But yet, from my perspective, the graduate guide isn't focused on those people, but it's focused on everyone, or at least certain types of people. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about the specific people you're trying to help, and then also the people that you interview that can then help those people through the conversations that you have with them.
But I think the craziest thing about what we're living through right now is that I feel like it used to be that if you had some level of privilege and you knew somebody, there was a lot of nepotism, and I think people could rely on that to get a job. They could rely on their network more and all these kind of things. And I think for the better, that's gone now. But what that means is that there's a lot of people with privilege, and there's a lot of people from disadvantaged backgrounds who sat there going like, okay, so what are we actually meant to do to land this job? Who do I have to be? What do I have to exude? What do I have to have done? And I think the thing that's not translated back down to our generation going through university and living in this age of social media is that everybody just wants you to stand out. And in this age of AI and seeing what other people are doing and seeing what's working for other people, I think very few people are exploring stories of really weird and windy career paths that lead them to the success that they have. Like, a lot of people just see that success and they're like, oh, they must have just done X, Y, and Z and got that. But it's never that simple. All the people that I interview, every single one of them, whether it's the CEO of IPSOS, Managing Director of BCG, or the founder of Huel or Liquid Death, all of these people have done loads of weird and wild things in their career, and when they didn't have social media, they didn't have anything to compare it to. There was no comparison there, so they felt like what they were doing was right at the time, and they kept rolling with it. They met somebody who introduced somebody, and I think careers is meant to be this zigzag. It should be something that's fun and dynamic and changes. But in our generation, it's like we don't even know. We're so conscious of what other people think what we're doing, and we're so unaware of all the new opportunities that we have no idea how to arm ourselves with the qualities to stand out. What does that actually mean to our generation? Oh, you just need to stand out. Okay, well, I've done the spring week, I've done the summer internship, I've got the degree. When was I meant to be told stand out? And so, yeah, I'm grateful now that as I said before, Christ, there's a lot of things I can't say I can do well, and I think CVs nowadays, they're really, if you're being honest with yourself, a lot of CVs is putting something pretty average and trying to make it sound as good as possible. And every employer knows that it's kind of it's waffle, but it is, you have to do it. It's the game. And whereas I'm coming from a different angle, and it's serving me well, where it's I'm not going to say anything that's more than it is, but I can 100% say, and I can show it, and can back it up in person or with proof that I've done it, that I am this. I am a relationship builder. I'm a salesman. I know how to build teams. I have emotional intelligence. I can be a good host. I can get people interested. Like that being able to say that and say what you're not is what I think is going to change the UK career crisis. And how to do it? Well, yeah, that's a whole other question, right? But we're giving it a good crack.
Interestingly enough, I mean, I think we've spoken about this before, but I was also having this conversation with one of my professors from last year. I won't talk about it too much because I mean it's his story to tell. But it was essentially a case of like him being not sure of like what he's doing moving forward, and I just caught him and we ended up having lunch yesterday. And the point was to say something that I've had in my own life, and you've just described this similarly, is that sometimes you can do something really good, know you were doing a good action, aka know that going to the gym is good for you, know that eating the right foods is good for you, and you might not know what outcome that will lead to, whether that leads to running a marathon or an Ironman or being a bodybuilder or just being and losing weight and being happy and healthy. You might not know the outcome, but you can know that by doing these small incremental good things, that good things will happen. And what I also think is interesting is that I think the career world is backwards in that the minute people get a job, it's like they've already achieved success. The idea of having said job is success. They put it on LinkedIn. I'm now an analyst at this bank, or I'm now a police officer, in this jurisdiction, or I'm now, a waiter at this restaurant. And it's like, oh, people identify as their job and as already being successful at
Look,
it.
and it
What
starts
I
at
think,
university, right? Like it starts from there. It's like I got into this university. Like, look at me, and this means I'm going to
exactly.
be entitled to this role. It all starts there.
But I think it's like there's two like separate points in that, and that I think it's so backwards because if you think you've already achieved the idea of success in that role and that personality becomes you, you don't feel like you need or want to change. And on the other side, what I also think is really interesting is like with this like career thing in which these people have already made it versus you trying to build up the graduate guide, and people are like, oh my God, what are you doing? I think it's really stupid because it's like, imagine you started going to the gym day one and people are like, why don't you have a six pack? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, why don't you
Yeah,
have a six pack? Like everyone else has already got their six pack, so why don't you have it? Well, it's like, oh, actually, I have to go to the gym. I have to work up my sets. I have to eat healthily. I have to learn what the gym equipment is. And then over time, I slowly get better and better. And I feel like that's a lot of the journey of an entrepreneur is that you start off and you have no fucking idea what you're going to do. And you have no idea how it works, what you're doing, what to do. But over time, as you meet the right people, as you ask the right questions, as you fail and fail and fail and fail and fail and fail, over time, you sort to learn these little things that build you up. So yeah, that was the analogy
sure.
that I had from your situation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's all just to use the gym analogy. It's consistent rep. That's is all it is, and the difficulty then is like how do you actually keep yourself and your things like your personal life, your fear of cringe. How do you like actually keep more a level headed and so that you can actually just really focus on actually enjoying putting those reps in, enjoying seeing the small gains. Like I think what you say is true because every single time I would push one thing forward, like I'd get a big guest on, or I would sign a big partner, whatever. It's like everyone expects that everything else in the company should be of that level, and if you're just a guy trying to work it out and do it themselves, that's literally impossible. Like, how are you meant
Yeah.
to have got your branding at the same level when one thing's gone much further ahead? How are you meant to, um, how are you meant to repeatedly get that caliber of guests? Like those kind of things are like somewhat out of control. So the more you just focus on what it's doing for you, like the more you can actually do it and ultimately get to the outcome where everyone is going, oh, how the fuck did that guy do that? How did he get to this point? Well, it's because I didn't give a shit what you thought in the beginning, and I kept on doing. And so yeah, it's a bit of a classic, and everyone will tell you that's done something different. That they were the person everyone laughed at, and then look at them now. But if everybody says it, then why don't people believe it more, right?
What has starting the graduate guide taught you about human nature?
Human nature. I mean, I'd be interested to hear what your idea of human nature is, but I would say, you know, at the moment, human nature right now feels pretty divided. it feels like only the people that you really work on the relationships with want you to win and genuinely mean it, and the others are pretty they'll be vying against you, and that places some level of importance and emphasis in your career on actually getting people in your life that you want. They want to see you win, and you want to see them win. If you don't have that, it's very difficult. Like it's especially in this age of like LinkedIn and social media and vanity metrics, where like that's the people with the money. It's what they need to see. It's what they want to see. So if you don't have people riding with you, it becomes increasingly difficult. But aside from that, I think there is a strange thing, and I think I alluded to it earlier in the podcast, is that we're as a Gen Z generation, and I hate the term Gen Z because I think that we're just a group of people that happen to be an age, and I don't like how people say that we all use the same TikTok language and whatever. Like that, it never used to happen in generations previously, so why is it happening now? But for the sake of clarity, let's call us Gen Z. We put people a few steps ahead who have achieved success on a pedestal that they've never been asked to put on. And it's a really damaging thing within human nature, where it doesn't allow for genuine discourse where like people can learn and improve and innovate together. It makes separation where the person's success feels like they're being applauded and they're not actually able to have a conversation with someone, and the person below is asking questions just to try and make them look good and try and make rub up their ego. And I think the sooner I learn out graduate, it's that everybody just wants to the ultimate aim is to be in conversation with someone that you find interesting and actually saying what you think and them saying what you think, but it happens so rarely. And I think whatever I'm doing, whatever the graduate becomes, one thing that will be at the core of our mission is allowing people to rush and do what I've done, or giving students and the ones who really mean they want to do this the opportunity to speak to people that, again, they have no right in theory to, and genuinely have conversations on behalf of other people asking those big questions.
I think you gave a great answer to the idea of human nature, and it was purposefully broad because I wanted to see which direction we would go down. I think I've noticed a lot of good and bad things about human nature and starting my own podcast in the amazing stories that I've been able to learn about and learn from people on the screen or from the audio. But a lot of the bad conversations I've had of how people have reacted to it in a positive or negative light. Something you touched on more specifically, which I think is really interesting, and I've had quite a good analogy about it, is that I think separation and putting people on a pedestal, as you said, is one of the worst things you can do. So taking like a little story. So I went to school called Eton College, and we were very fortunate to hear from incredible speakers every week. So from Monday to Friday, 8:45 to 10 p.m., we'd hear from past presidents and prime ministers, CEOs, top global musicians, politicians, philosophers. And when I started off and I went to the school, I started to go to these talks, and I thought to myself that, these people are amazing, but I can never be like them. And I'm at, what is arguably one of the best schools in the world. And even then I'm thinking to myself, these people are incredible because they're, people, from that point, I don't see them as human. I've seen them from a screen. I've seen them performing in front of millions of people or leading a country. And so they don't look like real people. They look like unattainable positions of power. But the more of these talks I went to, the more times I spoke to them, and it's a similar thing that you've probably got from your podcast and that I've got from mine, is that you start to see the human element in them, in that they didn't all come from the same background. They're not all from the same country. They didn't all go to the same school. They've had periods of success, periods of extreme levels of failure, of loss, of heartbreak, of being bankrupt. And that's what's led them to become the incredible people they are today. And so the biggest benefit that I think I got from that experience was going from, hey, these people are really cool and really amazing, but I want to listen to their stories because they sound cool. And I'm sure a lot of people do this on YouTube, listening to, Bill Gates give a talk. It's like, oh, it's cool, but I'm never going to be like him, but at least it's cool. To actually flip my head of like, oh my God, if I actually play my cards right and I meet the right people and I do this and I learn this, sure, I won't be like him or someone else tomorrow, but I can become a little bit better each and every day. And on my year off, I worked a little bit, and I sat down with literally almost everyone in the firm I was working at, and every person would tell me their incredible story of how they went from here to here to here to here. And I myself, 18 years old at the time, and these people are 50 years old, probably multimillionaires in their own right, starting, in the industry they're in, incredibly successful. And one of them said something really interesting to me. They were like, Harvey, sure, all these people are really smart and really amazing, but you're really amazing too. And if you think about it, these, people were not in the position they're in at your age. They were probably doing something similar or slightly better or probably worse than what you were doing. So all you can do, alluding to the point from before, is the best you can do at the time. And over time, with those small incremental steps, you become better and you reach those positions of power. And I think that's a really good perspective for people to be able to listen to and learn from. Because, when you've got all these people talking about like, go to the gym, eat well, create a good group of friends, like when you're not in that position, it sounds like absolute bullshit. Like, how is me getting a good group of friends, eating healthily, working on a passion project 1 hour a week going to get me towards those goals when you've got a shit situation at home, you've got bills to pay, you're in a depressing part of the world, there's fucking wars on every day, and the news is making it sound like we're on the brink of catastrophe every single hour. Like, how does that work? But that's the piece of gold dust that I would give, and I think that's what you've given as well.
Sure, yeah, and I think, yeah, you're right. I think ultimately, who am I to say any of this? I'm just a guy sitting on a podcast saying what I think and what I've done. Like, there are people with different contexts, and people are going to believe in different things. So I think ultimately, no matter what context you're in, everybody wants to strive towards being as happy and fulfilled as possible in this crazy world that we live in. And I think one thing that I like to just give to every single person who listens to the podcast, anyone I meet, anyone I speak to, is the superpower at a young age that being naive can give you. So, being youthfully naive. Yesterday, I probably had the biggest example of why youthful naivety is a superpower. And I think I can tell the story. It's pretty fresh, but so I've been fortunate enough to get to know Leo Harrison, who is founder of Chapter 2, and who Stephen Bartlett is the co-owner of the company. Chapter 2 basically works with all the biggest companies in the world, and delivering like top talent strategies and teams for them in a really innovative and disruptive way. And he invited me to come to an event last night with all these people. I was by far the youngest person in the room, like no one even close to my age, and everyone was kind of looking like, oh, what's this guy doing in this room? And I got there, I had some conversations, I was easing it, I was nervous, I was having probably one too many drinks, like just trying to muster up the courage to speak to people, and they gave this talk where it was the global director of HBC and Stephen Bartlett being interviewed by Leo, and it was an amazing talk, very insightful. It got to the end, two people asked questions. They were like, "That's all the questions we have time for." And I was like, "I missed my opportunity." Stephen said, "No, let's take one more." Points at me, and I said, as a young person at the beginning of my career, what can I do to make the most of being in this room, for the rest of this evening? And everyone was kind of like taken aback by that question. It was so different to what they were expecting, and it immediately brought eyes on me and curiosity into what I was doing. And I didn't pitch myself, I didn't sell myself, but he was like, God, I've not been asked that. I was not expecting someone to ask me that today. He gave a really cool answer that I found very inspiring. And the rest of the evening, not to be overly arrogant, because I don't intend to, but I might as well have been Stephen Bartlett, because everyone was coming up to me, asking, "Who are you? What's your story? Why are you here?" Like, and I think being naive to what that question could lead to, embracing being young in a room that you have manufactured yourself to get into, like nothing has happened in theory that I've not been given a golden star or a grade or anything, but I just felt like, okay, this could be important. The people I meet today could be important. They could change the next 2, 3, 5 years of my business. And yeah, just mustering up the courage to ask that very simple question like that can change everything. Yeah.
But again, it goes back to what we were talking about before, in that you've met someone through, you're trying to open up all these doors and one of them's stuck. You got yourself into that room. And then again, you were like, I don't know what to do, but let's pick a good step. And that was picking the question, then everything happened for you. And it like that might seem like, oh, but this guy has got these connections he's got in this room. But the answer is no. Like, if you learn anything from listening to yourself or even listening to me for this past, 40 minutes, the point is that these connections aren't there. It's about what you do every day to go out and find them. I wanted to change course a little bit, and then ask one sort of last question on this, and then move on to something else. But I want to know, you've now done this for 2 years. It's very clear what you're sort of like, what the premise of the idea is for the graduate guide, and what it is. But I want to know what the long-term goal is for it, and also how it differs from when you started it to what it's like now, and the opportunities that you've had along the way.
So yeah, it's quite a loaded question. I guess when it started, it was that back against the wall feeling that I wanted to become good at something and bring others along my journey. I wanted to build in public. I wanted to build with my audience that so that I was solving a problem that actually needed solving. And I've been doing that the whole way through. And it's important to note that until 3 months ago, the graduate guide's always been that passion project within the side. It was either when I was doing university, or I was building an exit from a Waterfields company, or working as head of events at a blockchain education company. I never stopped doing it. I wasn't getting any financial reward from it or whatever. I just felt like this was my brand. This is why people bought into me. It was the graduate guide. That's what I was doing, and so I kept doing it. And 3 months ago, everything kind of aligned and made sense. A mixture of people pushing me to do it, myself pushing myself to do it, and realizing that it's kind of now or never, both in my own career, but also in terms of like how necessary change is needed in the way careers is done, especially early careers. And so really where we're at now is that we're in a very fortunate position. We have our own studio, having raised an investment in King's Cross, arguably the best place in the world to do a studio, because it's London, and nobody can make the excuse they can't make it there because it's got every single tube line going into it. And we have the ability to not just platform myself, but some amazing students in different industries, picking the very best to fly the graduate guide flag in their own respective industries and interview amazing people. So, and continuing this idea of if you tell enough stories, everybody will feel heard in their career. Everyone will see success as a bit more attainable. And yes, there's business models and sponsorship models and all these kind of things that I won't bore your listeners with, but fundamentally, we're not going anywhere. We're just going to keep building. We're going to keep telling more stories, and we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're taking what's a proven concept, be that Flight Studio or Fellow Studios, like these new podcast studios that have been set up with celebrities and experts. And I'm saying, give it to students. This is such an amazing way to solve careers, empowering us to at the beginning of our careers where we're hustling and young and have really great questions to ask to change the career crisis through the events we put on and the conversations we can platform people out.
I feel incredibly privileged to talk to you at this point in time. If people have noticed from my previous guests, I've kind of got a range of people, from people that have already become a billionaire, or an award-winning actor or actress, or someone that's been the top 5 tennis players in the world, to students who are in the midst of building something. And I don't know if you feel like this, but I often sort of think of this curve, which I've told you about. It's this compounding curve in which you're sort of here and you're doing something and little progress, and then suddenly you just blow up. And I feel like you're right next to the blowing up bit. You know, you've got like 15,000 followers on LinkedIn. You've only spent 3 months independent, and you're already in the same room as people like Stephen Bartlett. You've got a production studio in central London, and you're 23 years old. Like, even if nothing happened and it was 10 years time and you had everything you've already done, I think it's absolutely incredible. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I appreciate that. Very glad.
Of course, but I want to go, and I don't just say that, like I wouldn't just be saying that. So that's, yeah, I truly mean that. But I want to go into detail on content. The premise of this podcast is to enable people to be the best they can be. And you might think, oh, Harvey, that's a very niche topic. But I think if you haven't learned that already, I think if you're not putting out content and deciding what your personal brand is, your personal brand is being decided for you. So I wanted to go into a lot more detail on content, how to create it, what the best platforms are to use, why you should have it. So my first question in that sort of realm is, what platform do you use? Why do you use it? And what's the goal of it in terms of making your content?
A good place to start is probably that I've never been at all in my whole life the person to put myself out there on social media. You know, I never put Instagram captions. You know, I've never had TikTok. I've never, you know, I'm a big consumer of YouTube, but I never was that guy trying to make videos or whatever that, you know, some people talk about. Yeah, I honestly, I was probably too scared of it. I think that, like, the environment I was in wasn't particularly, like, it didn't allow for it very much, and I got to the point at university where I truly knew who my friends were. I knew who I cared about the opinion of, and I cared about their opinion. And only then was I somewhat ready to slowly ease myself into building a brand on LinkedIn. And why LinkedIn? For the bad rep it can get for, you know, sort of when you go on a student, it's emojis flying around, it's personal branding gurus, and you know, successful people congratulating other successful people. You have no idea how you're meant to make a dent in this platform, or like why you're even on it. But I think it kind of starts with first understanding the extreme superpower and overpowered nature that having a personal brand on LinkedIn gives you. You know, when I was starting out, I was reaching out to people off a whim, you know, trying to personalize questions enough that someone might say yes to coming on a podcast that didn't even exist or had no viewers or whatever. You know, fast forward 2 years, you know, she said like 15,000 followers now. Yeah, and 2 years of consistently posting. I couldn't bullshit like my personal brand if I tried, because my whole journey's been documented. Everybody's learned with me, and bit by bit I've become more authentically myself, to the point that I can message someone. I can walk down the street in London. I can see an office. I can look in it. I was like, oh, yeah, 7th floor. I wonder what that company is. Oh, I wonder who the CEOs of that or the head of partnerships. And I can go message them, and pretty well know that I'll get some kind of response to that, because, you know, I've I've built a reputation on top of what a CV gives you. Like I've built a reputation for doing something, for caring about something, and I think LinkedIn is what you make of it, like many things, but it's very, you know, this is a new thing. Like in the last 2 years, it's been changing from a professional platform to, you know, genuinely a social network. You see that with, like, they've just launched video on there in the last 3 weeks, and it's blowing up in that sense. And I think if you can start building your career on LinkedIn, like literally now, you're listening to this, like just think about what you post, think about something that you've done that you can reflect on in an authentic way, and get your tribe, your people around you to start blowing that post up. Like, you will be mesmerized by like how quickly things can change for your life on that platform, the doors they can open.
All right. I'm convinced. You've convinced me to start making content. I'm listening to this, Peter. You've convinced me. But you
But
know, I don't know. I don't know. I've got some hobbies. I'm in a finance club. I'm a first year student at UCL. What next? I mean, I don't think people really want to hear about my life. I don't know if I have anything that's that particularly interesting. I mean, I don't know. What do I make content about, and how do I do it, and how do I put together a plan of what to do?
you soon great success on LinkedIn of people who have lived extraordinary lives and haven't built a personal brand, sort of documenting everything that they have done, and it's easier that way, right? Like, you've got this whole bank that you can just go into and make content on. And so when you don't have that as a student, when you've not had those lived experiences, another way, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to start a podcast, because they definitely don't. But it could be blogs, it could be for your master's dissertation, or just something that you're planning on doing or committing to, reaching out to people in your own space, like a few steps ahead, who are happy to share their story, and putting your own spin and wording and your own unique creative touch on what they've said. And ultimately, one thing that I found is that the people that have been there and done it, like, they find it very hard because they know so much to say it in layman's terms, to say it in a way that's accessible to everybody. And our superpower as younger people is to take something, dumb it down, and actually get it to more people, because it's just simply more consumable. So like, learn how to write. Anyone can learn how to write on LinkedIn. It takes a bit of getting used to, and there's some things where I don't know why it is the way it is, like with the double spacings and everything like that. But I think the more you can just try, and you don't have to do it all at once with this one big proclamation that you're now building a personal brand and you're now doing all this stuff. Just ease yourself into it. Like, see what people think, see what they like, see what who reaches out from it, and get a taste of what people like hearing from you, and try not to have any fear of cringe when doing it. Try and make sure that all that matters is the people around you in person, and go and have a beer with them, and just forget about the post you made earlier, because you can just make another one the next day.
How does I want to go into a bit more detail on like the composition of that post. Something I've learned about social media is like I've ticked that step of wanting to create it, and then I've ticked that step of what I want to talk about, and then finding some areas in which people are interested in those sort of topics. But something I've realized is that there's a wrapping, like there's sort of like a wrapping paper, I'd say. So you've got the product in the middle, but you need to show it in a way that makes people want to consume it. So in TikTok, that's like, you've got to have a really good hook, and you've got to have like constant cuts, and you've got to say this and then cut to this, or have some new character. It's constant, like, quick attention span, 3 seconds, blah, blah, blah. YouTube, it's like, how can you keep people's attention for the longest? I mean, it's all attention based, but it's very much like, loop people into this video, introduce new characters, but over a longer period of view. Twitter, it's like these short tweets, and then these threads, and then people repost it and you react, blah, blah, blah. But what is it for LinkedIn? Is it watch time per post? Is it how much time they spend reading your post? Is it whether they comment? Is it likes? Is it shares? And how does that feed into your mind when you've got this idea of what you want to talk about? How does that feed into your mind when actually composing this message?
It's probably different when you're starting out to when you're like at a point where I am now, where I kind of like to try and do things that aren't prescribed to me and told this is what works, the algorithm, because if you've got people that are automatically interested in what you're going to post, you can try and feed them stuff that they're not used to, and that is actually a USP in itself. That's what the algorithm will reward, because it's just captivating. It's just a captivating piece of content, and it's done authentically, and it's delivered from a person who actually means what they're saying. But in the beginning, there are some tools like Upwork, and I highly recommend. You can get a free trial, see if you like it, but it gives you like scores on your writing. It tells you analytics on your content, and very specific ones. And ultimately, it allows you to bank stuff. So like you have notes, but very specifically for LinkedIn, you can keep like all your diary of when you're looking to post, and and you can come back into it and edit it later. And I think nowadays I just like to. I never thought I would enjoy writing on LinkedIn. I kind of used to see it as a bit of a burden before, but because I get to do it in my own voice now, I actually look forward to just sitting down and writing. And I think the closer you can get to that comfortability where what you have to say and the way you have to deliver it is interesting, You know, the algorithms and the analytics will do the rest of the work. Like, yeah, there are. You can go on Google and search what the algorithm likes and doesn't like, and I could sit here and bore you to death by telling them. But do the research, be curious if you do care about it, and take it from me. Like, the quicker you get to just being yourself, the sooner your content will start doing well.
But why is that? I mean, you see that, a lot of people really struggle with the idea of being themselves. I mean, you even talked about that as your 14, 15-year-old self. You felt like you had this pivotal moment in which you kind of stepped away from this idea of self. But yet you keep coming back to the idea that being yourself, being authentic is the most important thing. And I think, being a bit of a devil's advocate here, like, you've gone to some of the best schools, best universities, and you're building this incredible thing. But, I'm sitting at home, I'm listening to this podcast, and, I'm out of shape. I don't have friends. I'm unmotivated. Why would I want to be myself? Why would, if I can't even do it in my actual life, why would on social media,
Honestly, what I would say to that is everybody's feeling and sense of self is it's so relative to where you're at. Like, when I started the graduate guide, like, in all truth, I might have been at UCL and I might have done this and that, but like, I felt shit because everybody around me was doing what I saw doing what they wanted to do. They were getting into the jobs they wanted to. They were getting good grades at university. I was like, struggling to get 2-1 at UCL. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to make myself stand out, and I feel like it doesn't matter what other people thought of me, and they could have told me everything was fine. My sense of self was not much, and I was particularly scared that I was gonna feel like I did in 14, 15, like, out of control of of being myself and living my life. Like, I said at the beginning, like, I'm so obsessed with how can I actually just live every day as I'm meant to. Like, how can I be the person I am and speak to the people in a way that I want to, and do the work that I'm meant to be doing, and not do the work that I'm never going to be good at. And I think, if you are listening to this and this all sounds like bullshit and rubbish and never going to be relatable, well, that's your problem is not that you should then start posting on LinkedIn. Your problem is that you need to work out, how to, love yourself, how to see what's great about you. And so, yeah, I mean, that's literally the reason why I put so much emphasis on being yourself, is because it's very hard to do anything well if you don't.
Something I've thought about a lot is this idea of longevity. I did a podcast with a guy called Nick Wheeler. He founded the shirt company Charles Tyrrell, and he talked to me a lot about, he had like a Christmas tree reselling business, and it made him a lot of money. And then he realized, oh shit, I can only do this like 1 or 2 months a year. So I need to find another business. And then he made this shoe business. It was made to order. He measured everyone's shoes. So he put his, he measured out their feet, put it on a piece of paper, sent it off to India. It came back. They were all different sizes. So he was like, oh shit, I can't do that shoe business. So then he started this shirt company, Charles Tyrrell. And he's basically built it up over 30 years, making these small incremental improvements year over year, time over time, to basically get to the $500 million or $1 billion company that it is today. Social media has had many different forms. You could say that, news and TV are the old forms of social media, but social media as we see it today has only really existed for the past 20, if that, maybe like the past 10 years. And we're seeing LinkedIn, and we're seeing these people blow up that we'd never heard of before. Just suddenly it seems like they've been around forever. But it seems like LinkedIn will be around forever, and, all these people will be, be there. But a big problem that people would pose is that we are at the platforms have all the power. If they suddenly decide tomorrow that Peter Wood should not be on LinkedIn and they got rid of you, that's it. There's not much you can do about that. I mean, we've seen that with TikTok banning people. The United States almost banned TikTok for certain legislative reasons. So I was wondering if you had like a strategy in your mind for how to get people off the platforms, or if that's any part of your mind. Like, is it about directing to a website, to a newsletter, so you retain those people even if the platforms go to shit, or if that's not a problem in your mind?
Events, like that's my bread and butter. It's what our career revolves around. As much as yes, I've built a brand on LinkedIn, like a lot of the funnel of what I do with those people is get them in person or events, and we're really trying to change how students network. So, for example, we rented out a football stadium and, had founders and CEOs play football amongst other students and having a barbecue and putting on a concert to try and like level the playing field of, combat that problem that I was speaking about before about putting someone on a pedestal. They don't want to be on that pedestal. Allow them to come play football and chat to them like normal human beings. And we now work with the likes of Google and business schools and helping them, get that in-person relationship with the top student talent. And I think these companies are recognizing you can't just keep these people online. You've got to give them that. You've got to give them that in-person sense of progress and meeting the right people and having those connections with people riding with you. And I think of course there are benefits to social media, but like as much as I have grown my presence on one of them, I think if it all went tomorrow, I'd be very content and very happy and just utilize what I have actually learned about myself and the in-person skills I've developed and run with that. Like at the moment, truth be told, I'm just playing a game because it's the way to do it. But if it went, then good riddance, honestly. But yeah, that's what I would say.
I've got sort of like three last questions. The first one being, you talked about it briefly that you really dislike Gen Z. I feel like, yeah, as you said, we've been bucketed as a generation. We are Gen Z. I mean, we're seen as the next big economic spender. We're going to create all these jobs. We're going to make all this change. We've got the rise of AI and all this technological change coming through. And I feel like a lot of it's coming down to, oh, it's Gen Z, Gen Z, that Gen Z, this is bullshit terms that no one really knows what they're talking about are being thrown around by every corporation under the sun. I was wondering if you could talk me through like how and if you look at and what you look at Gen Z as a generation, how you think it differs from previous generations, if at all, and how that can be useful to corporations and older generations for creating content too and creating jobs and interacting with them.
We're all very very different as Gen Z. I think like back in the day, from what my dad tells me, that people picked a profession, they start at the bottom, they rose through the ranks, they they earned their badges and then they landed in a comfortable spot and everybody was kind of more similar, right? There was more community, there was more togetherness, and no matter your like ethnicity or background, like there was just generally a more connected feel. Whereas, I think as Gen Z, we have the ability to do like truly extraordinary things with our career, and you see that time and time again with like what you're saying, AI, like all that stuff. That I have no idea how they're building this technology. I don't even know where you'd start with them, but we have brains that before might be able to, do something pretty impressive, are now doing something truly like game changing. But for the rest of us, we're sat there wondering how those other people did it, and we're not being carried with them. And it almost feels like a lot of our generation feel like if they win, no one else can, like attitude. And and it's a shame, and it's something that I'm trying to combat in what we do. And and I think then if you ask people from previous generations and this generation, I think the answer would not be that one's better. I think it's you take the best bits from both and try and give to our to our children, for example, a sense of community and togetherness with the embracement of technology and social media in the best way possible. Will that happen? I mean, it doesn't feel likely right now, but I would feel pretty ashamed if I gave up hope on it happening at the age of 23. I'm not quite there yet, but yeah.
My penultimate question, what's next for you? Could either be the next few months or in 5 years' time, depending on how you look at it.
I think I'll go 3 months. It's probably a bit more accessible, but yeah, next 3 months, as you said, I think I'm not going to say it's going to rocket or anything like that, but I feel like I kind of have this feeling that if I can't build a business with what I've got right now, I'm just not meant to build a business. Like I've got everything in, yeah, it within me and all the means and the support and the backing and to do something great. And yet we don't have clarity on everything. And to be honest, the Graduate's not meant to be a multi-billion-pound business. Like it's just not. It's never going to be that. And I'm pretty comfortable at the age of 23 for this to be like an amazing, life experience that I can use as my career and build something that lives beyond me. And if it makes money and we find ways to do it without stealing from the brand, then great. But in the meantime, it's about working with our partners, like I said, like Google, and putting on monthly events with them. It's making more content than ever. It's scouting the best talent, both for all these companies, but also for our own podcast incubator that we'll be running, and just helping our next generation or the students coming through university now, utilize what I've found to be such a game changer in my career, and giving them the awareness and education on how to do it.
And my final question, and I ask this to every podcast guest, is what is one thing that you would want a listener to take away from this episode?
I hopefully what you take away is that if you have clicked on this episode, you may have looked to my LinkedIn and you may see that I went to UCL and then I worked for these startups that are now doing very well, and I worked head of roles and built a company, and you might think it all seems very easy and very linear, and this guy's not relatable or accessible, but I think hopefully, and it's something that I hear and get time and time again when I do my podcast, is it's never that simple. Everybody's got their own demons to combat, no matter what background or level of privilege they come from. It's all relative, and that like I'm on this journey. As much as things might feel like they're going well right now, I'm at this point I'm very prepared for the entrepreneurial life, which is what means it's not simple. It's not going to be easy. Things are going to go wrong that you couldn't even foresee, and like if you want to hear more from me and what I'd say, check out what we do at the Graduate, and obviously keep listening to Harvey as well. You'll get constant tips.
Well, thank you very much. I think what we hear about from a lot of people on LinkedIn, on social media, and even in our interactions day to day with any human being is we hear about their what. We hear about what they're doing, where they're working, what school they're at, what degree they've got, what amazing job they've just earned. But I don't think people always have the why. And I think the why is, as we've spoken about before, is fundamentally the most important thing you have. Because the why takes you from what am I doing? I'm going to the gym for 3 weeks and then, I've given up. But the why is, I want to be fit and healthy for my family. The what is, I'm doing this podcast that lasts for a month or 2 months and then you burn out. But the why is, for you, is to completely change and fix this career crisis. And I think this strong why is something we've come on as we've taken you from this journey, which I keep coming back to, about you as this 14, 15-year-old kid that realized, hey, I want to change, to going to UCL, to going to Canada, and then going to university and being like, hey, I actually am not like everyone else. I've got these skills. I'm good at talking to people. I love connecting with people. I love telling their story. And by telling their stories, I can learn a lot. But hey, actually, these other people can learn a lot as well, which they can take into their own lives. And I think I've just thoroughly enjoyed this entire past hour, just learning about your why. And I think by having seen that past and seeing that journey, it really boils in and it enables us as the listener to learn about who you are, what you're destined to be, and where you're going to go. So thank you so much for your time. I really, really, really enjoyed this conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.